All right, I finally finished Hunter x Hunter with the 13th chairman election arc. This one's pretty short, only 12 episodes, but it's also the conclusion of the anime. I'm going to try to keep my overall discussion limited to this arc, and I'll make a separate video for my full series thoughts about the ending in particular. I'll just say overall, as far as ending the series goes, it does feel a bit rushed, very open, a lot of plot lines not concluded, and it almost feels like a filler arc to end the series in some ways.
I'm sad now.
The bulk of the arc is spent with Gon in a coma. We do get to see more of Killua and his family and their dynamics, which I really enjoy, and I'm glad that that gets explored more. We get some world building with them trying to replace Chairman Netero, and Gon finally reaches his goal of meeting his dad, who remains the worst dad positively portrayed in anime ever. In isolation, this arc is fine. As an ending to the series, I think it's really weak. And I know that the manga is still going and that the author has health issues, so it's probably never going to finish. I can only discuss the show as its own thing. I know with anime and light novels and manga, a lot of series tend to not go to completion unless they're super popular. And if this was a story that got cut off because of production or whatever, I would be a bit more charitable about the ending being inconclusive. But seeing as the show had 150 episodes, it covered 340 chapters of the manga, and all these years later, there's only 410 because of the author's health issues. This series is like 80% concluded, and all of Gon's story seems to be done. So in that context, I do think it's relatively weak.
Those that doubt me, suck cock by choice.
And my understanding is that the author's health issues are back pain, and he's had to have surgeries and stuff, which I'm sure is miserable. But to me, at some point, if he really wanted the story to finish, he should have said, look, I'm going to be in charge of the story, maybe even storyboarding, and then I'll just have to have other artists draw it for me. Obviously, Hunter x Hunter was super popular. I'm sure he has the resources. I believe he also wrote Yu Yu Hakusho, so money really shouldn't be an issue for him if just finishing the story was the priority. I mean, he's no George R.R. Martin, but it is a bummer that the story won't finish. Even if he had all kinds of ideas, we'll probably never see him. And I do wonder if the plan was to eventually bring Gon back in the manga and let him get his powers back. But from what I've heard, Kurapika becomes the main character and Gon just fucks off. Anyway, I don't want to go on too much of a tangent. My point was and is, I think as an ending, it's pretty unsatisfying and just overall inconclusive. A lot of this arc is just the election and kind of the politicking, and it's fine, but even that just sort of feels like a waste of time with the way that it ends. Essentially, there's a bunch of gaming, and the vice chairman, Pariston Hill, nominates himself. They have the whole process because they have to get a 95% voter turnout. He ends up winning, immediately steps down, and hands it over to Cheadle.
Gotcha, bitch!
So she becomes the new chairman. There's a whole thing in here where Jing predicts what's going to happen. Leorio is one of the final candidates in the running. He just cares about saving Gon. And then Gon comes back to life. So Pariston gets elected and then doesn't care because he just kind of wanted to play the game.
I'm fucking better than you, okay? Much better than you. You are garbage.
And the more interesting part of the story is Killua trying to get Gon to wake up. Obviously, Gon burnt through all of his Nen energy and life force to beat Pito. So now he's in the fucking hospital looking like all for one.
Boom. Roasted.
The main part of this plot is Killua is trying to save his little brother Aluka, who has this crazy ass ability with a split personality where he makes requests to people and then grants wishes. And the more ridiculous the wish is, the more ridiculous the request will become after the wish to balance it out. So this whole plot is Killua's brother Illumi is coming after him and Aluka because he wants this essentially unlimited ability. And depending on who the requests are for, it depends on who dies if the requests are failed.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
And because of the way that the rules work, this puts Hisoka in danger as well as a bunch of other people. Obviously, getting Hisoka back into the plot is always a highlight. And they call the split personality something. And this is Killua's plan to get Gon back to life because they say that this ability is limitless. And this all leads to Illumi using civilians to chase Killua. And somehow they just now try to address the issue of personality mattering for the licenses.
Are you fucking retarded? The hell's the matter with you?
And this is something I said was a world building issue from the first arc, and people in the comments assured me that it would get addressed later on.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
I do not consider what this arc does to be addressing it. They acknowledge that it's a problem and that they should get rid of that rule that allows hunters to do whatever they want so they can arrest them or kill them if need be. And I guess in the most literal sense, it is addressing it, but it's also retarded. Leorio and Gon and Kurapika graduated from like the 280th class of hunters. So there's been literally thousands of hunters, possibly over 10,000 over the course of 3 centuries. And I don't believe for a second that there was never a crazy ass hunter or a criminal hunter behaving in ways that were obviously immoral and breaking the law. To me, it almost comes across as something that the author realized was a fuck up and then was like, oh, I'll address it when I can, and then use this opportunity to try to do that. And to me, it's just unbelievable. But we get a fun chase with the Illumi going after Kahlua and Aluka. You know, he puts tracers on the butlers. Kahlua can't let Aluka more than 1 meter away from him. He uses a bunch of decoys with multiple blimps and tries to outsmart him, but just can't do it. Eventually, they do escape enough to use Aluka's ability on Gon. He wakes up and runs to where the voting is and yells at his dad. And I'm glad that Jing at least gets booed for being a loser and a deadbeat. But still, Gon views him positively, which is kind of frustrating as the main character. And the conclusion, I think, is supposed to be like a feel-good episode between him and his dad, and it just rings really hollow to me. I mean, Gon's literally in a coma, possibly dying in a hospital like a block away, and Jing's just like, nah, I'm good. He'll be fine. And doesn't go visit him at the hospital.
Because fuck him, that's why.
And then the show ends with him being like, I'll see you at the top of the world tree. So Gon, who was just in a fucking coma for days or a couple weeks or however long this arc is, has to climb half a mile up a fucking tree just to have a conversation with his dad. So yeah, Jing just fucking sucks. I really think it kind of hurts the show that Gon's entire motivation is to meet his dad, and his dad is just an absolute scumbag the entire way through. But we get a nice conclusion for Gon here where he reunites with Leorio. Him and Kahlua have a decent goodbye. And Kahlua has a nice arc over the whole series, where obviously by the end he's much more emotional, protective of his family, much closer to him, and much more open with himself. So I enjoy all the Kahlua stuff. It's just kind of a bummer that it came at the expense of Gon. And we get another decision here that I wouldn't say it doesn't make sense as much as I think it's just kind of chicken shit and really undercuts arguably the most emotional scene of the whole series, which is Kite is reborn into Rhaena's body, which was the kid that the queen was having as she was dying that Colt took in. So Gon can get his forgiveness from Kite. The koala can get some kind of redemption and try to make right the things that he did. Just wasn't really a fan of that decision.
I'm never happy.
Especially given the fact that it happens with only a couple episodes left. So there's really nowhere for that to go or develop. And this all leads to Gon going to talk to his dad. Their whole relationship happens in one speed run montage conversation. And I actually like the message from Jing to Gon. And Jing's message is essentially that it's good to have goals, but it's more important to enjoy the journey. And he talks about how the things that ended up being the most important to him were things that he found along the way unintentionally. Obviously, the relationships and the people that he met, the experiences that he had, and the memories he created. I think that's all good messaging. It's just kind of hard to give a shit about it when it's coming from Jing. Like, we're looking at a father who abandoned his son.
Le who? The her.
Arguably the most important thing in your life, to be an adventurer and talking about enjoying the journey while he abandoned the journey of being a father. And obviously he doesn't have any memories with his son that he can share or experiences or anything like that. So again, I think the way that Jing was done just really kind of fucks up the whole show. It doesn't ruin it, but I think it undermines a lot of it. Primarily Gon's motivations and some of the themes being spoken about here. And again, this is a super weird finale because he talks about how the Chimera ants came from somewhere else and that their world is part of a much bigger one, and you need 4 qualifications for it, of which he has none. So it's like setting up for this big epic tale and then the story just doesn't go anywhere. And my understanding of the manga is that it certainly doesn't go in this direction. We go back to Kurapika's revenge. Who knows, maybe the long-term plan was to have the Kurapika revenge arc, Gon gets his powers back, and then this would be the next part of the story, but we'll never get there, so it's irrelevant. And we get kind of a little montage here at the end credits of where everyone ended up. We see one of the shapeshifter wolf things replaces the butler for Kahlua, so that Kahlua doesn't have to have the guilt of getting one of his butlers killed by Hisoka. And we've got a whole bunch of open threads still that will never be closed. Overall, I thought it was a really good series. Very obvious why it's a classic. It does a lot of things really well, but it definitely feels inconclusive. And ending with a sort of filler arc feels really abrupt. I mean, the dude is almost 60 at this point. The story is not getting concluded. So I think this anime series is kind of all we're getting. Who knows, maybe they'll throw out another season or two to adapt the next 70-ish chapters. But I'm glad the show had the balls to do a lot of things that you don't really expect from shonen shows.
Impressive. Most impressive.
It really committed to tough decisions and decisions that could easily be unpopular. And for the most part, I think they work really well. Obviously, this means characters dying, characters going away and coming back because they have their own journeys. In some ways, your main character isn't the most interesting, but I do think Gon was really important for the tone and kind of holding the group together and the whole group dynamic. So yeah, overall, I was very meh on this arc, but the series itself was really good, and I'm glad that I was able to watch it over the course of a couple months. If you've seen the show, let me know what you think about this arc. I'll probably try to do a video that's more broad strokes for the whole series now that I know the context of everything. But I think we'll leave it there for this one. I try to respond to the comments that aren't just insults, like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.